Welcome back. The Senate Finance Committee unveiling the text of President Trump's big, beautiful bill yesterday. It includes major tax reforms and changes from the Senate, even steeper Medicaid cuts than the House called for. Other key differences include an increase in the child tax credit and a lower cap on the state and local tax deduction. Now it's going back down to $10,000 from the Senate on salt. That's down from the House's $40,000 cap. New York Congressman Mike Lawler calling the Senate proposal dead on arrival, warning that he will vote no on the bill if the SALT cap remains down at $10,000. The Congressman Lawler will be on this program with me tomorrow. We will get his reaction to all of the changes in the Senate. Joining me now is Kentucky Senator Rand Paul. He is the chairman of the Senate Homeland Security Committee and a member of the Senate Foreign Relations and Small Business Committees. Mr. Chairman, great to see you. Thank you so much for being here.
Good morning, Maria. Thanks for having me.
So I want to get to the conflict between Israel and Iran in a moment, but you recently revealed that you are not an absolute no on this big, beautiful bill. I know you have concerns with raising the debt ceiling. What are your thoughts today on this bill?
You know, I'm absolutely in favor of the tax cuts. I voted for the tax cuts in 2017. I want to make them permanent. I think they were a big factor in the historically low unemployment we had in the first Trump administration. So I'm all in for the tax cuts. I'll vote for additional tax cuts. I actually believe, as Art Laffer and the supply siders have said, that you can cut rates and actually get more revenue. In the end, the tax cuts from 2017, I think, did pay for themselves. So they've got me on the tax cuts. I'm all for it. I'm enthusiastically for it. I want more spending cuts, but I realize that there are many big government Republicans that aren't going to allow really significant cuts, but I can vote for cuts that aren't everything that I want. But I can't vote to raise the debt ceiling $5 trillion, because really what that means is that we're going to get more of the same, and that even though the numbers sound big on cuts that are in this bill, when you put them against an annual deficit of $2 trillion, you say, oh, we're going to cut $150 billion. Well, the deficit this year is going to be $2.2 trillion. If you cut $150 billion, which isn't really real in the first year, you'd still be at $2 trillion in debt. So we're really not transforming or changing the direction of the country away from bankruptcy. So I can't vote for the debt ceiling, but I've said, look, you want my vote? Negotiate with me. I think we could have a separate vote on the debt ceiling. They may well be able to get that. They could get Democrats. Democrats love debt. The Democrats have always voted to raise the debt ceiling. There's not one instance in our history where Democrats didn't vote to raise the debt ceiling. So let the Democrats own it. Don't have the Republicans own this monstrous debt.
Yeah, no, I understand your thinking here, but look, we've got the so-called X date coming up when the government runs out of money in August. We're waiting on whether it's August or closer to September. But regardless, you've got to raise the debt ceiling. So what are the solutions? Are you saying raise it temporarily? Are you saying, you just want a separate vote? And are you sure you're going to get Democrats to actually go along with that? Because once the market starts figuring out that the government is about to run out of money and we don't have a lift in the debt ceiling, don't we have a spiral out of control where markets start reacting and trading down?
Yeah, I'm for going ahead and extending the debt ceiling. I would do it in short increments. Okay. And the reason I would do it is to keep it on the front burner. But I also think that, recently Moody's downgraded our debt because we have so much. Not because I didn't think we would pay it. I think most of the marketplace knows we always pay our debt. We always extend it. And even if you didn't, we bring in about $400 billion a month and our payments about $80 billion a month. So there's plenty of money to always pay our interest. We should take default off the table and not even talk about it, because I think it scares and spooks the markets. But I do think that if you did it incrementally, in about 3 months, we'll be at the end of the fiscal year. And believe it or not, right now it's the big, beautiful bill. In about 3 months, it's going to be the big, beautiful omnibus, or the big, beautiful CR that comes forward. And the question I will have at that time is, what have you done to correct the problem? You promised conservatives, vote for the big, beautiful bill, and we'll fix it at a later date. But if we keep voting on the debt ceiling every 3 months, then what would happen is they have to show us some proof if they want people to keep voting for it. So I'll vote for a 3-month extension, or I'll also vote for separating the debt deal onto another bill where the Democrats can own it, not Republicans.
Well, that's a very practical way of looking at it. I spoke with your colleague in the House a few minutes ago, Warren Davidson, who was only one of 2 no votes in the House. Listen to what he said. Are you willing to take this so far as to blow up the president's agenda? What is your problem with this bill? Is it debt and deficits? Are you going to vote yes on it?
Well, I didn't vote on it the last time. The problem is, as I said, there's only one Congress we control. It's the one we're in. And frankly, we control this presidential term, and it never spends less money. I could live with the fact that it spends a little more money and it grows deficits for a year or two if by the end of President Trump's term, it's back below the current level of the deficit. The current level of the deficit isn't sustainable. That's why we've campaigned. That's why we pushed Doge. That's why Elon Musk is saying this is going the wrong direction.
Yeah,
we're trying to save money.
So you're willing to blow up the president's agenda. You're willing to blow up the president's agenda then?
I'm not voting for a bill that grows deficits, Maria.
So, Senator, bottom line here, do you think this gets over the finish line in July and gets to the president's desk sometime in July to get this passed?
Well, I think a good way of looking at this, because I tell people, like I say, I'm enthusiastically for the tax cuts. I voted for them in 2017.
Yeah.
I helped to formulate those tax cuts in 2017. I will not be the deciding vote against this. I promise you that. If I'm the deciding vote against this, they will negotiate with me. Right now, they're not negotiating with me because they don't think they need me. So I will not be the deciding vote. The bill will not fail because of me. But if it is up to me and I am the deciding vote, there will be a negotiation, but there's going to be a conservative shift to the bill if they want my vote. And that's what I should do as a conservative.
Senator, let me move on to the breaking news of the day. This is day 5 of Israel's war on Iran's nuclear facilities. The IDF has killed Iran's newly appointed wartime chief of staff, the most senior military commander closest to the Ayatollah. He was only at the job 4 days after his predecessor was killed as well. President Trump maintaining on Truth Social Tehran cannot have a nuclear weapon and that Iran should have already come to the table to make a deal. The president is also warning, quote, everyone should immediately evacuate Tehran as he left the G7 summit in Canada early to monitor the Iran-Israel conflict from Washington. He's going to meet with his National Security Council in the Situation Room shortly this morning, Mr. Chairman. I know you do not want more wars and you don't want the U.S. implicated here, but what do you want to say in terms of the U.S.'s participation in supporting Israel's efforts to ensure that Iran does not have a nuclear weapon, sir?
Well, I think the president's instincts on foreign policy and war are good. I think his instincts are restraint. I think his instincts are towards trying to find a diplomatic solution. He keeps mentioning in each of his statements that he's open to diplomacy. But the real question now is, do you think Iran is more or less likely to negotiate now that most of their senior leadership has been killed, as well as nuclear scientists, as well as, bombing of their facilities? Maybe they are. Maybe they're completely, bereft and we've taken most of their stuff and they know they have no power, and so they'll negotiate from a weakened position. But there's also a possibility they rally to their flag, they rally to nationalism. They perceive this as, being bombed by a foreign country without, preemptively or preventively, and that they rally to this in a way that goes away from diplomacy. I think only time will tell on that, but I hope diplomacy is not off the table, and I encourage President Trump to continue talking to them. I'm not for sending our soldiers over there. I'm not for sending our bombers over there. I don't think we should be involved in this war. There's about a 2,000-year Christian doctrine called the just war theory, and preemptive or preventative war is frowned upon. It hasn't been looked kindly through history, even from other civilizations. It often doesn't stop war. It ends up starting war and ends up having war that goes on endlessly.
Well, I mean, look, the nuclear facilities have been diminished substantially in Iran thanks to Israel's efforts, but there are still serious nuclear facilities underground, including the Fordow unit. And Jack Keane was with me earlier, the four-star general, talking about the deep penetration capabilities that the United States has. And that deep penetration bomb is what Israel needs in order to get at that Fordow nuclear site. Would you support that?
Well, still, there is the question is what is the response? Do you bomb their deep bunkers, their deep nuclear facilities, and they give up? Or do you bomb them and then they quickly make the rush to a nuclear bomb? Even right now, that is a possibility that as we speak, they're rushing to enrich. Once you enrich uranium, you only need like a cupful for a bomb. So several cupfuls could be several bombs. And it could be that they're racing towards that at this point. But you have to realize before Israel bombed, our national intelligence estimate from only a couple weeks ago was that they were not pursuing a nuclear weapon. They were not pursuing enrichment to that level. So there is a real question of whether or not this will make it better or worse, and only time will tell. I mean, the bombing will be seen as genius if Iran capitulates. if Iran rushes to the bomb, it will be seen as the provocation. And that's why this is an unknown, and you have to make a rational guess as to what Iran will do, and you don't know what your adversary will do. Do they react in a nationalist way? Do they rally to their flag and say, we're not going to take this from Israel and we're going to fight back? Or are they demoralized and humiliated by the attacks and say, well, we have nothing to respond with? So far, they're responding, and that's the question. Will they continue to respond, or will they capitulate? Will they come back to the table? Nobody really knows the answer to that.
Well, your colleague, Senator Roger Marshall, told me here last week that they were 1 week away from enough enrichment uranium to have a nuclear bomb. But the Senate Homeland Security Committee released text for the border section of the big, beautiful bill last Thursday. And I want to get your take on this because you've been very clear on the border money as well. It reduces new border wall funding to $6.5 billion from $46.5 billion. Mr. Chairman, you've criticized what you've called excessive spending on the border wall, even though the president has been incredibly effective with his border policy in terms of eliminating crime in America. I mean, are you sure you want to stand? Yeah, go ahead.
I have nothing but compliments for President Trump on the border. He's reduced the flow of illegal immigrants by 95%, an enormous success. The money was asked for before the success happened. Now that the success has happened, we need to evaluate the money needed in terms of the success. If you Google how much does a fence cost, you go to the Custom and Border Patrol site, they tell you $6.5 million per mile. You multiply that times 1,000 miles, it's $6.5 billion. So there's a discrepancy here. When Secretary Noem came to my committee, I told her this, and she said, well, it's 12 million, even though the website said 6.5. Well, that would be 12 billion.
Okay.
That's still 12 billion compared to 46 billion. We shouldn't forget that we're conservatives just because we're talking about the border.
Okay, so you want lower numbers so that you could affect change on the overall debt and deficit. Senator,
it still would be an increase. It would still be an increase in border funding.
Exactly. Yes, I got it. Senator, it's good to see you. Thank you so much for walking us through it.
Thank you.
We so appreciate you. Rand Paul joining us on Capitol Hill.